Welcome to a Higher Self YouTube channel exclusive video series on walk-ins. My name is Michelle Walling and I love this Higher Self YouTube channel. While you may be used to hearing the computer's voice, in this series I'll be talking in my own human voice. The owner of this channel, Dawn, also has an amazing website, www.higherselfportal.com. You can join her community to post your own articles, and you can also post your own advertisements and a host of other helpful things on her site. Again, check out higherselfportal.com. I'm very grateful for Dawn's service to humanity. She reposts other people's articles and videos in order to spread information to as many people as possible, and she spends a lot of her time researching. You can show your support to her as well by joining her group, by donating, or by sharing her work on social media. You can read more about topics like walk-ins on my own website, www.howtoexitthematrix.com, or you can even book a session at me at www.michellewalling.com. Now, let's get down to this video's topic. Living with and assisting walk-ins. In the first video in this series, Walk-ins 101, I discussed what a walk-in is and how one enters a body. Now, I have direct experience as an awakened individual with living with a walk-in. Not only did one of my exes have a walk-in and know that he was a walk-in, but I also witnessed 3 of my family members walk out in my presence. After I learned about walkouts and walk-ins, I realized it had been happening to people around me most of my life. So in this video, I would like to share some of my direct experience so that you may get a better perspective of what to look for or how to react or support someone who may be an NPC or a walk-in. When I was in my early 20s, my uncle suddenly died from a heart attack. He left behind 2 young boys, my cousins. They were elementary school age, and I had changed their diapers before, and we basically grew up together during weekends and summers. So I was immediately concerned for my little babies when I heard the news, so I rushed over to console them. I walked in the house and I found them sitting in their bedroom on the lower bunk, right next to each other. I rushed over to them and gave them a hug, and I realized that both of them were completely frozen. No blinking, no movement. They didn't even hear me, and I waved my hand across their face. Nothing, no reaction. Now that freaked me out so much that I ran out of the house, got in my car, and left. I didn't know what I was looking at. There are medical explanations that they'll try to tell people that basically they were in extreme shock. But looking back, I just know it was the moment that they walked out, that their soul left the body due to the trauma or due to the contract it had already made before they came here. Now, both boys were completely different after that. Both of them lived together for most of their life and probably still today. Both drank excessively as teens, as they were getting older and into their 20s. At Thanksgiving and Christmas, we continued the family tradition after our grandparents and their uncles died, and it became a drink fest party at these holiday gatherings, and that was normal. Alcoholism was normal in that part of the family. And as close as we were when we were young, we grew drastically apart. Although I wasn't awakened until 2010, and I didn't know what happened until I encountered another frozen moment with another family member. I felt that the kind of people that both of them had become was just not the kind of people I wanted to be around, period. And I made the decision about 10 years ago to not attend any of the holidays anymore with them or at their house. Many of these bodies that are inhabited by the soul, uninhabited by the soul, became NPCs and vessels for uninvited guests, dead people or astral beings, reptilians, etc., where they gang up and do the final push to sever the soul from the body completely. The new energy source that is occupying the body is siphoning from others. In some cases, they can imprison the soul, the original soul, which allows them to receive negative energy, and they can torture the soul, but we won't get into any of that today. Now, the next complete walkout experience that I witnessed was when a very close family member of mine was going through a very rough time. He had experienced extreme trauma, and he was using alcohol and marijuana to an extreme to numb himself. And he was also receiving thoughts to kill himself. At one time, he had a loaded gun to his head, and a friend showed up just in time to talk him out of it. He came to stay with me for a few months to get sober and reevaluate his life. One day, I came out of my bedroom and I walked into the living room and saw him sitting on the couch. He had his back to me. He was very still. So I walked around the couch and sat next to him just to chat and see what was up. He was completely frozen, not moving. And I just sat there with him for a few minutes. I finally touched him and he blinked his eyes, shook his head and said, "Whoa, I don't know what happened." I noticed over the next few days that he became more emotionally detached, and he began to fall into a very strict workout and eating routine, basically changing his diet to lean meats, fruits, and vegetables, which was very different for him. And I decided, he decided that his time with me had come to an end very quickly. He did very well in life after that, and he got a really good job with a large home improvement store where he worked his way up the ladder and became an assistant store manager very quickly. In this case, I don't feel like there was another permanent soul walk-in, but he did stop calling me and texting me, which very much bothered me personally and hurt my feelings. Basically, if I didn't contact him, I didn't exist. I eventually realized what had happened after talking it over with a few close friends. Although I actually witnessed it and kind of knew what happened, I just couldn't actually believe that it was true. It took a long time for me to get over this, but I'm pretty much okay with it knowing what I know about walk-ins. I wondered where he went and how the body was operating so efficiently on autopilot. He wasn't the same person at all, even though he had the same voice, the same mannerisms. He just had less emotion and no connection with me. Another experience I can share with you is I had an ex-boyfriend who I met after my divorce, and we really clicked in the beginning. I had just awakened, and I met him at a spiritual conference. I was so happy to have met someone of the awakened population, which in that time, in 2013, about half of the population was real. A smaller portion of the awakened population were single or even compatible. So finding someone, I felt I was pretty lucky. Not too long after meeting and dating, things seemed to go very wrong on my end and my perspective of everything. In this relationship, I learned a lot about my own behavior and relationship patterns because of what had happened. In this person, there was not just one walk-in in the body. So in a way, medically, you could say this person exhibited schizophrenic behavior. So one person, the original, was very kind, one was narcissistic, and one seemed to be very cosmic, distant, and neutral emotionally. So even though I knew about walk-ins, my ego and my 3D personality struggled with its own wants and needs in this relationship. It was an emotional roller coaster for me, and I can say that I didn't deal with things in the best way. I pushed and pushed for this person to wake up and be responsible for the things that he said or did, or even that he didn't say or do that hurt my feelings. The reality was that the left hand didn't remember what the right hand had done in him. And I didn't know which hand I was waking up to or talking to. Over and over, I was given chances to realize what had happened and to learn from it and learn how to control myself. My biggest complaint was that I wanted him to do something to help me heal from the emotional trauma I felt like I was having. And I wanted him to be responsible for his words and actions. And of course, then I just wanted to salvage whatever it was that we first had, and I felt like I failed. I went through emotional devastation and then through a period of healing. Part of that healing was applying the principles of forgiveness, non-judgmental, and unconditional love. But I would have to walk away to perfect those. And I did learn a lot about myself, my control issues, and my inability to be in a relationship with a multi-walk-in situation. That it was real, and I was expending so much energy trying to find that one being I originally connected with. Now, this went on a good 6.5 years of my life, so I feel like I've seen enough to be able to report to you what a walk-in is like and living with one. In this case, even a multiple walk-in situation, and the person actually knew that he had walk-ins. So, how do you recognize a walk-in? Well, like I've talked about, suddenly the personality changes, the likes, their clothing, their eating habits. They drop some friends and get new friends, or they may get a new job, or they may become more routine-like, or they just have other major changes in their life that are just surprising or very noticeable. If there's not another walk-in soul, they tend to be less emotionally responsive or receptive, and you just can't feel a connection there. Maybe you look in their eyes and they're just glassy, or there's no one really in there to connect with. Perhaps one of their walk-ins may be a bit narcissistic or self-absorbed in your perspective. Some walk-ins, when they hit the body, they become temporarily disoriented and may seem a little crazy. There may be some memory loss. They could freeze, they could have seizures or blackouts, although most walk-in situations where they walked out usually has to occur when they're completely asleep or where they've had an accident or surgery. So if there was an accident or they were in the hospital under anesthesia and they came the person woke up and became very different, that's almost always a walk-in situation. So there are probably more, but that's really the most of them that I wanted to report on. And one of the biggest in my face changes that I experienced to show me one of the walk-ins with my ex was that he used to sleep with heavy sweatpants and a heavy sweatshirt on, with a heavy blanket, with the air conditioner up to about 78 degrees. And all of a sudden one day I look over and he's sleeping completely naked with no covers on from then on. And he probably changed after that, but that was just like one of those in-your-face discoveries. One of the other things that I noticed is that this person used to come up with some really new information and awakening help, but for 3 years he was repeating the same information over and over and over instead of being able to come up with new information. And this may have been the number one personality safe zone, but somehow these walk-ins weren't able to create anything new. And this is not for me to judge, but just to witness and realize this is not the person I first met, and we were no longer compatible. Finally, I'll share one more tidbit out of all the experiences with the ex. One walk-in totally changed his eating habits, and he told me that he even had a new walk-in, and she was female, and he told me her name. She liked classical music. So, as you can imagine, I was struggling to figure out if I wanted to have a relationship with her. Now, I don't really feel comfortable discussing what level or vibration of walk-ins that these were or that I saw in other people. I consider, let's just bring up my ex-husband, for example. I consider sometimes there to be possessions rather than walk-ins. So there are different levels of beings out there in the universe, and there are different levels of beings here as well. So we're not going to really get into the different types of beings that can occupy the soul, the body, along with a soul or a lot of souls at once. But because I can't see them, so I can't report directly on who they are. But it was very interesting to be with someone that knew that they were originally a walk-in and then knew that they were having walk-ins, and then to not remember when they had other walk-ins and what the other walk-ins said and how they dealt with it. And they dealt with it pretty well, actually. So it is all about perspective and about, I think the whole thing was really a very good learning experience for me to learn how to act differently and react differently. So breaking up with this person was very difficult for me emotionally. I felt like I had failed, and I was really trying to use those spiritual principles that I had learned to get through this. Over a period of 6 months after the breakup, I began to review all of the relationships that I had in the past, which were quite a few, and really feel the sense of failure that I had and try to figure out what was wrong with me. It was then, after 3 days of a life review, where I looked at each relationship and I was shown what had happened, I realized that I may actually have helped souls walk out. Every relationship that I had changed shortly after. And I had always tried to salvage it, always tried to grasp that original initial connection that I had. And I had mostly gotten my heart broken and closed my heart off and became defensive and aggressive to protect myself. Yet, some of these relationships, of course, were reptilian love bites, but some I saw they were such beautiful souls, and I had assisted them to be freed by loving them. It was quite a startling revelation, and it really helped me to heal myself. And I felt so much better about myself that it wasn't me always that couldn't keep a relationship. Further confirmation came that some of us have also helped clear out the astral realm from the dream state. All of the souls that had died in their physical and were earthbound, they had dropped the body, but they either couldn't leave or they didn't want to leave. And this was kind of the same thing, but we're walking through the fourth dimensional astral realm in the body. And thank goodness all of those people I had relationships with didn't have to drop the body when they left. I mean, can you imagine me leaving a trail of dead bodies? I mean, I'd certainly end up in jail. I've shared some intimate details about my perception of my experience with you. Not, of course, wanting to make anyone in my life look bad, but honestly telling you my mistakes of my 3D perceptions. How could you do this to me? Heartbreak after heartbreak. Why do I attract these narcissistic beings? How could I have fallen for this one again? This me perspective. I did this in hopes that you really understand how the old personality that needed to be in control of their relationships, not wanting to get hurt again, wanting to make things work, she had to learn to let go and become an observer and have faith with understanding that everything was happening for a reason. And if I wasn't a fractured, abused, and mentally and emotionally tortured child, I may have been able to support these principles a lot sooner in life. It would have made my life so much easier. But I will say that the timing has come now where I've actually realized all of this lesson. And in the past, rarely would I witness the walk out and walk in, mostly because there weren't many that were involved in an accident or had a surgery. It was just while we were together, so most became NPCs, because then after that we weren't together. So very rarely, except for that last relationship I told you about, did I actually talk to the walk-in. Most people otherwise had no more emotional or true loving source connection that I could feel anymore. It was very sad for me. And I feel like that this has been happening to some of us for most of our life, and here we are with now about 1/3 of the people are real and 2/3 of the people are the NPCs or the non-player characters. For some reason, their bodies are just running on autopilot. And I believe it's because we are preparing for a mass amount of higher dimensional beings, souls, to walk into those bodies and to make everyone in our reality real at once, which pretty much ends the game. It won't happen. The game will not end immediately, but it won't take long after that for the proof that we've been looking for in our reality to change, setting us up for the final shift. The change of the guard is happening now, and it will continue to happen through the end of the year very rapidly. There will continue to be freeing of more trapped souls, and these souls finally get to either go home or to join another version of another Earth, to be able to finalize their karmic energetic balances and lessons without some of the AI, draconian interference and frequency lockdown, where they have phantom devils attacking them and energy vampirism, all of the things that have held them in what I'm going to term hell. I'd say that we've done a good job, volunteers. As we mature, we realize that our ego has been our protector, causing us to be controlling and harsh, maybe deceptive and manipulative, in order for us to try to have some semblance of what we wanted in life. We were forcing and directing things to try to find some kind of pleasure and joy or love where we were, which, like I said, I think was pretty close to hell. This is pretty much the reverse of how life is supposed to be, and we have to learn how to erase that defensive, controlling attitude program towards anyone out there, because these next beings are arriving from other places that are not used to the harshness and fear that we carry or carried. It's precisely why they haven't landed before. The reptilian brain and base survival chakras have been running our programs, and we were really more primal and aggressive than we realize. Especially when we're tired, sick, under the influence of extreme amounts of alcohol or drugs, we actually kind of step out of our bodies and revert to the NPC program running our bodies, or maybe even let some astral beings in to drive the vehicle for a while. So how will we react to a large number of personality changes in people in our reality all at once, over, say, a 3-month period of time, where 2/3 of the people began to act differently? Luckily, it will be so much easier to deal with mentally, because we have all taken a good look over our awakening period of how we could improve and how we've been doing emotional and mental healing. We need to realize that every real person has their own perspective, and therefore we don't need to feel like we need to be right anymore. There's right for us, but that doesn't mean that there's right for someone else. In the past, though, with the NPCs, of course, we know there really was a clear right or wrong in our perspective, because most people were acting like robotic idiots. But things will be different. We need to continue to control our own behavior, being responsible for our own thoughts, actions, reactions. And we need to continue to hold neutral compassion and support for everyone, and especially until this happens, just in practice, even with an idiot. And I don't say that judgmentally. It's just a word that I called some of these people that I knew just were not acting real. Some of the walk-ins coming will have an easy time sliding in, but some of them will be hit really hard by the density when they get into the physical. And although it's not near as dense as it was even a year ago, it will still be difficult, and we need to understand that this is not just going to be easy, what's coming. But I tell you what, the energy on the planet will be exacerbated into much, much higher frequencies simply from the mass number of them coming at once from the higher realms. The final thing I would like to discuss in this video is that higher doesn't always mean better or even more intelligent. Some of these walk-ins will have a lot to teach us, and some will actually learn from us. This is where judgment has to diminish in our programs, as we will continually be given opportunity after opportunity to take the high road in any disagreements. There will be different perspectives still. Not all will be in agreement or kumbaya, namaste, just yet. We will still have another final shift, which will separate us yet even more into the versions of Earth and group experiences after these mass groups walk in, settle in, and try to change everything about our old reality. You may decide that the new being that has walked into someone close to you just isn't someone that you would like to be around. There'll be breakups, divorces, and you may even break friendships. But this will end differently if you practice the spiritual principles we've all been talking about. Finally, you can read more about things that I cannot share on Facebook or YouTube on my Patreon page, How to Exit the Matrix, where you can show your support for my work with a monthly donation, and you can also schedule that session with me, especially all you new walk-ins, at michellewalling.com, MICHELLEWALLING.com. The next segment of this walk-in series will focus on walk-ins and the impact they will have on the future of Earth. And then I'll do a Q&A video that answers your questions. And I've already seen some very interesting comments from self-proclaimed walk-ins, where they give us their name and their memories are intact. This is all proof of my work, and it's time now for first contact, but it's right here on Earth through the other human being bodies. Bye-bye for now.